All right, colleagues, I'm going to kick off, and thank you very much for joining us. My name is Solofina Nekesa, and I'm a Senior Professional Officer for Urban Systems at ICLEI Africa. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the matchmaking event and workshop on investment opportunities in Africa's urban food system. And maybe a bit of background on this, I'll share this as part of my presentation, but I would like to invite you to actively participate in this session and be part of a discussion. And before we begin, please be reminded that our webinars are recorded and that by being part of this session, you're consenting to being recorded. Then all recordings will be uploaded on the project page after the event. This will be shared shortly in the chat. Then the key outcomes will also be shared with the registrants of the workshop. We welcome you to introduce yourself in the chat with your name, as well as the organization or institution that you're representing. We also welcome you to have active discussions in our chat boxes, ask questions throughout the presentation by raising your hand and unmuting to speak when called upon by the facilitator. And this is with the spirit that African City Food Month is a platform of engagement with different stakeholders in the urban food systems, with the aim to support our local government in transforming the food system to sustainable and resilient food systems. The recording and outcome from this session will be shared with you after this. So the event we are hosting today is Investment Opportunities in Africa's Urban Food Systems, Matching Opportunities with the Funder. And this is on the back of the project that we are currently implementing in partnership with FAO, as well as local partners in Lilongwe and Arusha, that is Ricolto and Julat's Consultant. Before we start, a bit of background on who we are as ICLEI. We are a network of local governments, and our aim is to support local governments in terms of influencing policy and driving local action for low emission development, for nature-based solutions, equitable, resilient, and circular development. And as you've seen, our work around food is really trying to drive as much as possible resilient development pathways, circular development, as well as equitable and people-centered development pathways. And of course, keeping in mind nature-based solution, as well as low-emission development. So I'd like to, first of all, welcome you to the African City Food Month campaign 2022, and with a theme of nourishing our cities towards equitable recovery. We know very much that we're in such a critical period in our food system, or in generally planning sustainable African cities. And we can reflect on the last 3 or 4 years and on the multiple shocks and stresses that the system has encountered. And this has affected the short as well as long-term objectives to achieve food security in cities, as well as attain sustainability. So that is why this year's campaign is very important. It will enable us to reflect on the journeys that cities are taking to build recovery and resilient food systems. It will also build on the discussions on how we can sustainably nourish the growing African urban population amongst the different shocks and stresses that are being experienced. I will highlight what partnerships are key for accelerating recovery, and then explore what governance processes and mechanisms need to be put in place to streamline the transition. And then we'll formulate critical actions and priorities for nourishing our cities. And this event really helps us to contribute to some of these aims, especially around identifying what kind of partnerships, exploring what kind of government processes are key for driving investment, and also identifying what are the critical actions and priorities for driving investment in Africa's urban food systems. So today we do have quite an interesting panel of speakers. And so we'll do an introduction from myself, and then we've invited in partners from FAO who will reflect on this whole concept of AgrInvest. What is it about, and why is it important, or why is it a key mechanism for transforming Africa's urban food systems? And then we'll have a presentation from Dr. Lamek Chimpero, who is an implementing partner in Lilongwe. And the presentation will focus around identifying the investment opportunities in Lilongwe, and also trying to deep dive in an identified investment case. And then we'll have from Ricolto, our partners from Ricolto, who are the implementing partners in Arusha, who will also highlight the opportunities in Arusha, as well as helping us to deep dive into the identified investment case. And then we do have city officials from Cape Town, from Lilongwe and Arusha. And the way we've set up the discussion is that we'll have 3 separate breakout rooms, one entirely focusing on the Cape Town investment opportunities, the policy environment, what are the priorities for investment, as well as looking at the identified investment opportunity, and then looking at where the opportunities for funding and matchmaking with funders lies. And that will be the same for the Lilongwe breakout room as well as the Arusha room. So if I'm to go on, our partners for African City Food Month, we do have the African Center of Cities, FAO, Ricolto, and Juliet's Consulting, who are our event partners for today. And as I started speaking about this particular program, investment opportunities in Africa's urban food systems. So this project has been ongoing for around 2.5 years now, and we've done this in partnership with FAO. And really the first phase of this was around identifying the key opportunities for improving resilience and nutritional outcomes of food systems in 5 project cities. And these were Arusha, Cape Town, Lilongwe, Lusaka, and Maputo. And so then after identifying what the key investment cases were, then we're able to identify, to move on to the next phase, which was deep diving into the selected investment cases, and then starting the process of identifying potential funders, and then matchmaking these opportunities with funders. But I think critical to the second phase of the project was understanding the policy environment for driving investment in cities. And so part of this, I think this is why we're here today, is to facilitate engagements of local governments, local partners, financiers and investors, as well as food system stakeholders for investment in urban food system programs in Arusha, in Cape Town, and Lilongwe. But beyond this, what is most important is that how we can drive investment in urban food systems on the continent beyond the project cities. And also how can we support local governments to strive towards building nourishing and resilient city region food systems, but then also how can private agribusinesses and investors be capacitated to start the process of investing in Africa's urban food systems. And so what has been the approach of our engagements, of our projects around urban food? So, and this we had to be right clear from the start, is that each identified opportunity has to have systemic outcomes throughout the food systems. And so we had to identify 3 lenses of approaching food system change in cities. And first of all, what does the food system value chain involve? So that if there's any other identified opportunity, it has the ability to be able to cause a chain of improvements across the food value chain, or in key areas of the food value chain. So right from processing, marketing and distribution, consumption, resource and waste recovery, production, transportation and aggregation, among others. And then also looking at, especially at from a policy point of view, what are those lenses for approaching a food system change in cities? What is that integrated urban food policy and governance approach? It has to look at factors that influence food availability, food safety, the local economy, and this is around employment and livelihoods around the food system. And so what spheres of governance are related, of government are related to that? Also looking at food waste and resource recovery. You can't look at food alone without sort of looking at the end of life as well as the repurposing. And then looking at climate change. And I think seeing that the impact of the food system on the climate is quite big. But then how do we develop sustainable food systems? And so therefore the policies and mechanisms for that have to be built. And then looking at public health as well, food access, which is key, especially for a lot of the urban cities. I mean, a lot of the African cities that we have been interacting with. This issue of food access has to be is a priority in cities. And then, of course, the aspects of urban planning. Where is food infrastructure placed, and is there availability of the physical space, and is there access to transport infrastructure, among others. But then, and then all of this is so that we can have a food security outcome. And then food security really refers to the availability, accessibility, utilization, the stability, as well as looking at agency and sustainability as some of those cross-cutting elements of attaining food security. So, and then maybe I will not go into details about this infographic, but reflect on the outcomes from the dialogues that we had last year that has been influencing some of our case studies, some of our work around investment in urban food systems. Looking at what are some of those critical actions, especially in African cities, for transforming a food system, but then also that are key to driving investment in food system. And I think one of the key things that did come out is that, a lot of the food value chain in African cities is driven by SMEs and the informal sector. So then how can we improve access to finance? How can physical planning enable that? And then looking at, of course, other critical actions around data collection, management, and dissemination, integrating food into urban planning and design, understanding who are the key drivers of a food system, and then how can we integrate this into planning and design mechanisms of our city. And of course, trying to think about the city as very much integrated into the overall urban sphere. How can we foster linkages between the city and the hinterland that is feeding the city, but then making this a very sustainable relationship between the city and its hinterland. And then, of course, investing in critical infrastructure and technologies, promoting sustainable urban agriculture, reducing food waste and loss, among others. And in here, we see some of the opportunities that will be discussed in today's webinar. So thank you very much. That's a brief background of where we are with this project, with the approach that we've been able to adopt in trying to look at some of the opportunities. But I would like to invite you to actively participate in terms of, one, identifying where are those critical, what are those critical action points for driving investment in African cities? What does a policy environment look like that can that is suitable and sustainable for investors, both local and international investors in the urban food systems? And then how can we empower the key players in the urban food system in Africa to actively participate? And then how can the food system deliver nutritious food, as well as other benefits for environment, for livelihoods, among others? So welcome, and we're looking forward to the discussions today. So at this moment, I would like to invite our partners for the matchmaking event, and that is FAO, to also introduce what is the overall aim of this initiative and partnership, and then also understanding what really AgrInvest is as a concept. So at this point, I'd like to invite Ms. Barbara Hladka, who is the Value Chain and Agribusiness Officer for FAO, to give an opening reflection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sala, and thank you, colleagues. Thank you for being here. I hope that you can hear me well. I'm currently on leave, but I found that I would like to really participate at this event. It is something that we have been working for some time with ICLEI already, and ICLEI Africa to be precise. And I can see here very many very interesting participants. So I would like to be quick on this introductory remarks, so that we can really dive into the talks around the cities and the investment plans that have been proposed by the stakeholders through the process that ICLEI it's leading on the ground. Through our experience, before I introduced you to the new FAO Green City Initiative program that we are now having as one of our flagship program for Africa. Before I start the introduction, I just want to say that during our engagement, and specifically under my position, we are engaging with the national governments. We have seen that the cities and the local governments has very much power to understand the challenges that the food system have, especially on their consumers, and to also be important part of the planning processes, an important part of the investment processes to allow for the investment in the cities. And I have a presentation to give you a little bit more background on what is the framework and what we see, what we have seen as as working in different cities. But let me just now introduce a little bit the Green City Initiative from FAO, which is a new initiative that was launched in 2020. And it really aims at improving the livelihoods and well-being of urban and peri-urban population. And it targets at least 100 cities around the world in the next 3 years, looking to have 1,000 cities joined by 2030. And the initiative mainly focuses on improving the urban environment, strengthening urban-rural linkages and the resilience of urban systems, services and populations to external shocks. Okay, excellent. Thank you for muting yourself. Ensuring access to healthy environment and especially healthy diets from sustainable agri-food systems, increasing availability of green spaces through urban and peri-urban forestry, and it will also contribute to climate change mitigation, adaptation, sustainable resource management. And FAO is not building a green city network also with our partners ICLEI, and it will really allow cities of all size, from megapolis to medium to small cities, to share experiences and best practices, successes and lessons learned, as well as build city-to-city cooperation opportunity. So the focus area of this Green City Initiative program is into the enabling environment, which is the policy support. And there is where we see that a lot of has to change. And there is also a lot of to learn between the cities to support risk and vulnerability assessments, but also to develop evidence-based and inclusive policies, planning and governance framework to foster investment, promote innovation for resilient green spaces and sustainable urban food systems. And then this initiative focuses on the action for metropolitan cities, action for intermediary cities, and action for small cities. So all these actions are actually specific. For the metropolitan cities, we mainly look to enhance the contribution to sustainable growth and wealth at national level. This focus on innovation and green technologies for agri-food systems and green infrastructure. In the aspects of the intermediary cities, it's to enhance their role in connecting rural and urban areas to basic facilities and services. This focus on balancing green and healthy environments with productivity, producing local food, and shortening the value chains and connecting producers to local markets. And action for small cities, it's to enhance nutrition and healthier diets and closer interactions to where food is produced, is focus on governance for functioning territories, innovation and green technologies from green infrastructures. FAO has a dedicated web page for the Green City initiatives with quite a lot of videos and information. So I would like to, I will also give you the link when I'm doing my presentation. But just to say that what we are doing with ICLEI and what colleagues from the different cities came here to present, and what we came also here to contribute to, it's within this initiatives, and it's really looking in how we can promote more investment-oriented public spending, and how we can promote more private investment into city food systems, into very specific projects. So while our introduction together with Sola was pretty, generic, we are coming to very concrete actions that the city selected to work on, the 3 cities that Sola mentioned. So this would be it from myself for the opening remarks, and I will tell you a little bit more about the AgrInvest initiative and how the promotion of private sector investment is led by the public sector, and what we have learned from the national work, and what we believe should be brought down to the cities to improve their policies and also public investments to leverage on the private investment. So over to you, Solo, and I'm looking forward for the engagements and today meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for that introductory remark on the Green Cities Initiative. And maybe if I could request that you also get into the presentation on AgrInvest, so that we can now have the input from the different cities. Then so that we can move from really understanding the concept and then how the different cities have been implemented in the different opportunities identified. Thank you.
That's fine. Should I then present?
Go for it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as I said, the Green City Initiative approach really focuses on different aspects in different cities. So we understand the difference between the different sizes of the cities and also the action that has to be taken within. Just to say that we focus on urban and peri-urban agriculture promotion, urban food systems development, and urban and peri-urban forestry within this initiative, and it really focuses on maximizing the provision of ecosystem goods and services, and fostering the sustainable climate resilient practices and technologies, and promoting sustainable urban and peri-urban development with inclusiveness and green and circular economy. And we do this through supporting local governments, which is also what we have done with ICLEI. It was work that has been, let's say, led by the local government. And we are also approaching it from a holistic perspective, as you will see from the AgrInvest initiative, which kind of like gave the basis for what we have done in the 3 cities for the investment cases. It's really important to look on all the barriers that we have in the food systems and address them together. Many times they are very good initiative in countries or at country level or at the city level. For example, some type of innovative finance for SMEs or some type of innovative finance for use in food systems or agriculture. And many times they are not able to fully use this very good instruments that the governments have put in place, because there are another barriers that exists, and they prevent them to succeed. So what we are really looking within this concept is to look in all the barriers and address them simultaneously. And then just this, it's a little bit of inside of what each of the focus areas look at. So let me just say that we propose also tools for municipalities as part of this initiative, which include urban planning and regulation, and public procurement and investment support, public incentives and public-private partnership support, awareness raising and education or capacity building, and promotion of inclusive local governments. And that's really important because, as I said, through the AgrInvest initiative, we have understood that there is very little in the agriculture sector and in the food systems, let's say, that is being discussed between the different actors, public and private. And the AgrInvest initiative really focuses on support to governments within the outer NEPAD agency and the Africa the Africa Development Agenda. And what we are actually doing is to improve the planning processes that are both national and local, that also interact with the cities, so that we don't understand only the challenges and problems, but we specifically focus on the action. And we understand, we have enough understanding of what the action have to take into. And actually the intervention from the public sector focuses on what we call policy instruments, which is very common in different continents or countries, but not that much common in Africa, where we are trying to kind of take out from the direct investment of the public sector into the agriculture space or into the food systems, and promote series of incentives and series of measures, economic, regulatory, or institutional, that would support the private sector investment. And that's something that also it's very needed at a city level, where we are, where the city, itself has to have very good collaboration and understanding of the private sector need. And that when I'm talking about private sector, I also mean the very small players at the market, or very small processors, even the informal sector that the cities would like to formalize to assure, sustainability and food quality. So this always is the private sector that we have been building this investment cases together with the public and private sector. But when I'm talking about private sector, it's not only the large enterprises or the large investments, but also the very small ones. But they all need specific public investments to be able to deliver, or to be able to be successful in their investment. So this is the approach that we use. It's using the policy instrument approach, and it's really focusing on what should be the right investment from the public sector, what should be the right actions in which area, so that the private investments, including the small ones, are enabled to perform their investments and have all the tools, have all the instruments in place, so that this investments from the private sector is successful. And just to say that this really goes into a new tier of change, where we see the public sector that it's really there important at the beginning of the change that we want to see. They need to deploy a basket of measures, which we call a public investments or policy instruments, that then enable the private sector to perform the sustainable investments that generate, for example, here national level, the jobs, the food security and nutrition and import substitution. So now what we are looking here is to really have the understanding of what should be this basket of measures, what it's missing from the public investment to support the private sector investment into the city, or the city objectives that they have set up for themselves. It can be food and nutrition, it can be food safety, it can be better sourcing of the supply chain of the food from the local farmers that are living around the city, or that are living in rural areas close to the cities. But we still see that the public sector is at the beginning of this change, because in our environments, in Africa, we have focused mainly on Southern Africa. We can see that the environment for building the strong food systems and the strong supply chains from farmers to the market and to the consumers are extremely challenging. And then you always, if you remember, you always hear in many of the conferences, or you can even hear from your local leaders, that there is a finance, but there are not enough projects to be financed from the private sector. They are on the other hand, always, being challenged by not having the right access to right financing instruments that would be, having that would be having, for example, the rates lower, because in agriculture, you cannot reach 30% of profit so easily. So there are many challenges, many barriers between the two in the food systems. And what we are trying to say here is that what we focus on is to really understand what the basket of the measure from the public investments, what these instruments should be, that they directly enable the private sector, not just some generic private sector, but the private sector that exists in and around the cities, to invest, to perform the sustainable investment and be successful in managing and in growing this investment. So and to achieve the common goal. So we are trying to kind of like coordinate the actions between the public and private sector, coordinate the investments, and understand what are the roles of each of these players, and what are the baskets of measures. And when we are talking about baskets of measures, it's the policy instruments. These are really type of a clear instrument. When we are looking at the countries that have had successfully implemented policies and plans, both nationally and locally, they really use this instrument policy approach, where the government looks into specific incentives, specific financing, de-risking de-risking instruments or specific, fiscal or economic instruments that they put out and enable more environment for the private sector to invest. And for example, technical assistance and communication are one of also these instruments. So it's not only financial, but it's also kind of like, the support, the technical provision and stuff like that. So what we believe are the 4 pillars that have to really be done. And we are here in this project focusing on the planning process, on the development of the investment plans that would be feasible and that would be very focused for the cities. So what we understand is that we really need to develop better plans as locally, both locally and nationally. We are sometimes treating the food systems as a homogeneous system. But it's not working that well. If you are producing tomatoes, you probably need a different instrument from the public sector than if you are producing, beef, or if you are processing beef in the city, you will probably require different financial instruments than if you are processing flour, which is something that it's not perishable. So in that process, we are really focusing on very localized planning using a smart policy instrument approach and investment planning process, where we are determining the specific instruments, the specific investments from the public sector and the specific investments that are required from the private sector in that particular area, that it's very, very narrow. So so just to say that this one is the first pillar. And then we provide support in development and operationalization of public funds. It's very important to say that the financing, and now with all the crisis with COVID and with the Ukraine and Russia conflict, the inflation, it's rising everywhere. So, having the right instruments that are promoting financing or access to finance for different actors in the food systems around the city and in the city, it's extremely important. And and offering de-risking and risk sharing, still investing in Africa, it's very, very risky. And some de-risking and risk sharing instruments are extremely important to have. So what we are focusing also is to advise local governments or the central governments on what risk sharing and de-risking instruments they should have in place, or are the best practice. And there are some very good ones around the continent that we normally focus on, sharing experiences between, which is, for example, Nigeria and South, which I believe are extremely successful de-risking measure that the government of Nigeria have put in. And we also propose a support to the development of institutions and systems that are using technologies. Many times, the services that we see from the governments, both locally and nationally, are not using enough technologies, or not using the technologies, not basing themselves on the technologies that are available. And we have found that, especially in agriculture, because there is a specific issue of, for example, insurance, specific issue of registration of the especially smallholder farmers or actors who are in informal area of the food systems. So there is a need for some good technologies that are able to do that, and that is something that the public sector can really focus on as a service provision to some of the to the banks, for example. Many times poor people or women and youth and smallholder farmers, they are not able to access finance because they don't have the right data about them. They are not being that they are not available. So these support to the institutions and systems that would support agriculture development and agribusiness development, they are very important, and we still believe there is a big gap in many of the areas. And the last is to support private sector development through improving their investment plans and also through development of the environment, but through also direct support to the private sector, both formal and informal, where we are focusing mainly on the management and business development and stuff like that. So that's also very important, and that's also something that the public sector can do and can support on. We have a lot of interesting initiatives around incubation and accelerations. There are many incubators and accelerators and business service providers in some countries, especially in West Africa, much less in Southern Africa. So apart from South Africa, there are very few in other countries, and these are the institutions that should be supporting the private sector development when they want to invest. For example, the SMEs or some cooperatives or another group of individuals who want to invest and who want to perform investment. So, there are a lot of gaps, and systematically we are trying to look at them from the policy perspective and from the instruments that need to be deployed to the development of the right de-risking and risk sharing instruments to enable the investment or to getting the funds for the investment, to support the development of public institutions and the technologies and the systems that they are offering, like the public services that they are offering to the system where they are needed, to support the private sector and the institutions that support them too. So that is more or less the idea. And then when we are now hearing from the cities on their investment proposals, which are somewhere here, where they try to identify the public and private investment need for one particular segment of the food systems, we are also trying to understand what are the needs of the private sector for its development, what are the needs of the institutions at the local public level, and what are the needs of the of some type of public fund, where we are looking at their function to promote the risking and risk sharing instruments that could then enable the financing of the investments. So Salom, that's from me, the presentation. I hope it was in time.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for that presentation. And then maybe more of a question to you that on that is, what is AgrInvest generally in terms of is it going to be a department that people can reach out to, if and sort of get some of the support that you've identified, or it's how are you looking at implementing this in the different in the different regions? And you say that in West Africa it's quite strong, but how are we looking at building this in, for example, Southern Africa?
Okay, thank you very much. So this initiative is focusing on a support to public sector and the private sector. So we are providing technical assistance mainly. We are sharing experiences between the countries. We are having partnerships in, for example, with Nigeria and Aircel, which they are ready to support any city or any local government or any central government that they would like to change how they do things, because I think it's very innovative. And if you do innovation, you are trying to learn from others. We are trying to learn from their mistakes. So we have a partnership with Nigeria. We have, I think, quite a range of let's say consultants in different countries. And for example, in Zambia, it's Musika. But in Mozambique, we are working with some individual consultants from IGC. So these are people who we believe have the understanding of the policy support. So this is how we provide the support to the local governments and to the central governments. It's on request. And one part of this support was also this work with ICLEI, where we partner with you guys, and we are trying to support the cities in developing their investment plans based on this framework. So we are using the same framework as for the central government, and we are trying to understand what are the barriers and what are the instruments that are missing, and what actually the municipalities can do to promote the food systems that they wish to have based on the private sector investment. So it's a little bit like different thinking that we had before, because many times we are we have been doing a direct investment. We have been doing government was sometimes doing a direct investment into agriculture. And we are trying to now say, okay, no, let's build environments that then can, scale up that that investment from the private sector, because as you all know, many times the resources are scarce, and and yeah, so then this is like really building on the private sector. Yeah, so that there's another question in the chat. Case study of whole process.
Yes. So for AgrInvest, do you support the investment case study or a whole process of investment case to successful implementation?
Okay, so as FAO, we are having a different teams that exist for different support. In my team, I mainly work with the ministers and their advisors at the central level. But here with ICLEI, we are also working with the municipalities and with their leaders. Now, for the investment case, for the investment cases for the private sector, we have another branch in FAO that is an investment center of FAO that support much more, the investment proposals that are more relevant for the private sector. And yeah, so I would say, yeah, we do support the investment case studies, and we also do provide support to the companies and to the government when they implement their investment plans. And we are using the innovative approach of instrument-based policies, which kind of like try to understand what are the roles of the different actors and how best they can use the money that they have in promoting mainly the private investment that's inclusive and sustainable. So, okay. So Lizzie, I can give you Nursal contact if you are interested, but they are really great. They have, and I would recommend everybody to look at their web pages. I think they are doing an excellent job, and they are really well ahead of us in the sub-region of Southern Africa. And we are trying to bring them down here so that we can all learn. Now we are doing it mainly at the central level, but I think it would be very useful also for the cities. Okay, over to you, Sal.
So thank you very much, Barbara. And if it's possible, please share the sort of a central website that people can access to get more information about the initiatives you just shared.
Yes, right. I will.
Okay, no, thank you very much. And to me, from your presentation highlighting that, creating a favorable environment is a focus, because then it de-risks investment in agriculture. And I think pointing out that issues around how can local governments support the private sector through creating that enabling environment, looking at localized planning that is very much contextualized to the challenges of a place, and then looking at moving public funds or identifying public funds to de-risk agriculture. And this is through different initiatives, as well as strengthening institutions and systems. And what we see from this is that once there's an enabling environment, we can almost assume that this streamlines issues around doing business within that context. Of course, it does not determine that it will be, but it's building the foundation for driving private investment within cities. And as this has shown, this can have impact on livelihoods. It can have impacts on food security. It can have impacts on quality of life within the cities, as well as infrastructure, among others. So I hope in the discussions as we go on is identifying, for example, in the different cities that you're in, what are those key areas or sort of leverage points that can sort of create an enabling environment to drive food systems transformation. But then also identifying where are some of those opportunities, or where are some of those initiatives that have been done already that can be tapped into in the different contexts. So now we'd like to hear from the different cities. I will invite our partners from Arusha, that is Ripolto, and our partners from Lilongwe, that's Juliet's Consultants, to give us a taste of what has been going in the different cities, what has been uncovered, but briefly, so that we can excite you about the breakout rooms. And ideally is that we're going to have 3 breakout rooms, one focusing on Cape Town, one focusing on Arusha, and one focusing on Lilongwe. And then we deep dive into the investment cases, but also focusing on the policy environment that can drive investment and also highlighting the opportunities in those spaces already. So I'd like to invite Hilda Okoth from Ricolto to introduce herself, and then also in 5 minutes, give us a highlight of what she'll be highlighting in the Arusha breakout room. Sorry, Hilda, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Solofina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hilda Okoth. I am a program advisor for Ricolto under the Good Food for Cities program, whereby we work with the Arusha City Council together with other stakeholders to advocate for sustainable food systems. In Arusha, we have been having a lot of challenges around food safety in the fruits and vegetable value chain. This has led to high levels of malnutrition, but also contamination along the whole value chain, and hence limiting access to healthy and nutritious food for all urban dwellers, especially the urban poor. So our investment case, or our proposed investment case, is around strengthening the value chain using participatory food system, food safety system. This is an adoption of the participatory guarantee scheme that looks along the value chain on how to put food safety measures and establish traceability mechanisms that can ensure really the mainstream consumers have access to healthy and nutritious food. So today in our breakout session, we are going to go more in details to explore the proposed investment case, but also we are having an official from the Arusha City Council who will highlight opportunities, investment opportunities in the fruit and vegetable sector, or as a whole, the food systems, and also briefly give us policies that really favor investment in our city, in Arusha City. So we welcome you very much in our breakout session to explore this investment case more. Thank you. Over to you, Solofina.
Thank you, Hilda. And so I would like to invite, if you would like to join the Arusha breakout room, at the end of your name, please add Arusha. So when you look at when you click participants, go to your name, hover over your name, and then where you see more, so rename and then add Arusha to that. So then we'll be able to identify where to have you to discuss further on the identified opportunities. So thank you very much, Hilda, and would like to also invite the representative from Arusha City Council, and we're looking forward to engaging with you later on. Sure. So then I'd like to invite Frank, Mr. Frank Tembo from Lilongwe, or Mr. Dr. Lamek Chimbero. Welcome very much. Welcome, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Solo. Yes, Frank is going to make a presentation on the breakaway rooms. Yeah. From Lilongwe, Julat Consulting is one of the institutions, or maybe consulting firms, that has been working in the various aspects in terms of food security, project programming, and also environmental management, and the main aspects in terms of programming, in terms of food systems, and the many other aspects. We've been working with the AGRI and the Lilongwe City in many aspects. The first aspect was actually looking at identifying the AgrInvest opportunities that we noted that in Lilongwe, one of the challenges that Lilongwe City is facing is actually in terms of the food wastage. you may not, okay, you may understand that Lilongwe is not a city that is producing its own food. Okay, Lilongwe city, it depends upon the food that is coming from districts outside the city. So because of that, the food that is coming in the city usually actually get lost. So there is high wastage in terms of the post-harvest foods. So in order to address this kind of a challenge, we've been working in terms of how best can this be supported. So we have come up with a proposal in terms of how do we address the food wastage or the post-harvest losses. So we invite you to the breakaway rooms where we will be talking about more details on in terms of how we are going to do the food hubs and also the solar dryers, which we are going to see how we can address the challenge of the food wastage that has been there in the city. That has actually helped, or maybe that has made many farmers or many people in the city to fail to access the nutritious foods that are supposed to be provided to the local dwellers in the city. So welcome to our breakaway group that we are going to be making the presentation on this kind of investments that we are looking at. Thank you. Over to you, Sol.
Thank you very much, Lamek. And if you would like to join, or if you would like to engage around the proposed case for Lilongwe, please join the Lilongwe room and add at the end of your name Lilongwe, so that we are able to identify where to place you during the breakout rooms. And at the end of this, I will be able to share some of the key outcomes from each of the rooms to take forward from the discussion. So don't feel like you're going to miss out on the different spaces. But do feel free, or if you're in a room and you like to shift to another room, just get back to the main room and then you'll be reallocated to another one. So I'd like to invite Daniel Adeni from ICLEI to share about the Cape Town case.
Great, thank you, Serafina. I think I'm going to be sharing very much in detail during the breakout room, but we are going to be presenting a case around the Cape Town fresh produce market, which basically supplies around 40% of the fresh produce in Cape Town, and we see it as a catalyst to drive investment into Cape Town's food system. And so we are going to be presenting the case and deliberating on it. So I invite you to be part of our breakout, if that's a picture. Thank you.
So just one moment. All right, thank you very much, Daniel, for that very short pitch. And so I'd like to welcome you. If you would like to join the Cape Town room, do add at the end of your name, Cape Town. And so we'll give 5 minutes for the transition, as we are also just giving a brief of what is going to happen in the separate rooms. So please use this time to change your name according to the breakout room that you would be interested to join. Is it Arusha? Is it Lilongwe? Is it Cape Town? And also, if you need support with that, put that in the chat so that we can also reallocate you. And so, what is this going to be about? So we can see that Arusha, there's going to be a huge focus on developing the food safety systems, and then also highlighting opportunities, especially around the fruit and vegetable value chains. Then for Cape Town, the Cape Town fresh produce market, and as well as the wider system, as well as the wider systems involved in that, storage facilities, finance facilities for traders, among others. And then for Lilongwe, we are looking at storage facilities as well as a microprocessing facilities. So I'm going to give a bit of like two minutes for you as Sneh, who is a technical lead, is allocating you to the different rooms. So what are we going to do in these different spaces? one, we do have city officials present in the 3 rooms. So they will be also giving us sort of an idea or insight into the different cities. What are the opportunities there? What are the initiatives that have been done in those cities? What are the cities' priorities for food systems transformation and change? And then also looking at the proposed investment opportunity, and then trying to identify, you know, how can this better contribute to more systemic changes along the food value chain. But I think as earlier presentations have noted, is that we are also looking at the policy environment for driving private investment in urban food systems. So really looking at how the local government can be a driving factor for private investment in the urban food system by creating a strong foundation and base onto which agribusinesses, private agribusinesses, are able to act and build on their different programs and initiatives. So, Sne, this is your space now. How are we doing with the allocation? All right, thanks for joining us in the main room. But I would like to give a couple of minutes if there were unfinished, unaddressed questions in the breakout rooms, because I know sometimes it's just too abrupt and then you're forced to rush through, or if there are unfinished contributions to the different cases, please do raise your hand so that you can do that right now. And then you identify which room you're in and then where you'd like to direct the input. Did we all say all we had to say in the breakout rooms? Okay, as someone
I have a contribution to make.
Yes, go for it,
from
Rose.
Lilongo.
Go for it.
Yeah, Rose from Lilongo. Yeah, we're talking of preservation and then preventing wastages. And I think we also have to consider storage of the preserved food and warehouses, and also where also considering the industries that could receive those preserved goods if they are using them as raw materials as well. So it's one thing to preserve it, but, you know, because it will just be for a certain amount of time, after which the preservation is no longer useful. So we have to be able to move it, store it properly, then move it to where it can be used as raw materials, and also consider exports, you know, passing into export. So it's just the whole chain. Just want to add that.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Rose, for your input.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very valuable input, and we are taking it to. We'll incorporate it in our deep dive. Yeah, thank you. Sure.
Do we have any other addition before I can before we can have the reflections from the different sessions? Okay. All right. No, thank you very much for that and for the different discussions. So, so for those that have missed out from the different breakout rooms, I would like to invite our representatives, our partners from Ricolto, our partners from Julat, as well as from also for ICLEI that did the on-ground implementation in Cape Town, to share some of the key outcomes from the discussions. But I think as part of the discussion is to also try to reflect on this whole issue around, you know, the policy environment, the enabling environment that can drive private investment in urban food system. So I'll start with our colleagues from Juliet's Consulting. So should I hand over to Frank or to Lamek?
Virginia is in the room. Maybe she want to say something before Frank comes in.
All right. So Virginia, over to you, and then I will hear from Frank. Okay, Virginia, you're muted if you're saying something.
Maybe she's going to come in later. Maybe Frank, can you pick up from there?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think what was coming out so clearly within the in the breakout room was I think the need, the relevance of the investment case. I think it was overly agreed that this is really addressing the need and the potential to achieve food security in the city. So we also looked at the policy environment, listening both from the city, but as well as looking at Malawi as a whole, as an investment destination, how they are creating that level playing field to creating a conducive environment for private sector investment. We recognize that there are a number of policies that specifically have been tailor-made to ensure that there are issues that relate to access to finance, issues relating to reducing of bureaucracy in terms of processing key documentation, and then also the support system. So one thing that we was also highlighted were the gaps in terms of coordination between the various ministries and how that trickles down to the city council. And through this project, that was highlighted to say that that's one of the key issues that would have to be addressed if really this has to be very successful. And then it was also coming out so clearly in terms of the city's new strategy of looking at issues of food systems that they are coming in. You know, that is a shift from their traditional kind of interventions that they have been implementing in the city. So that assures the potential investor of the political will around supporting this particular kind of intervention. And it was also coming so clearly to say this is a priority for the city council, and issues of public-private kind of partnership would work so well. And there is the return for investment in terms of the investment in the quad hubs, but also in the solar dryers. And I think the last comment also that came through in this plenary around including issues of incorporating issues of storage, but also considering adding value beyond preserving the quality. So I think in summary that's what was coming through from the breakout room, and we value so much the comments from the team, and so that then that will lead to an improvement, around the investment case. Yeah, thank you so much. And over.
All right, Ivan, if you have any addition? Thank you very much, Frank, for that contribution.
Thanks very much, Frank. I just wanted to make just one quick addition that was quite interesting that was discussed in our room, is also the consideration of low-cost interventions to reduce or to address the same problem of food waste. And one of the participants recommended for stakeholders to consider the time in which the market operates and to develop infrastructure such as maybe lighting that will allow vendors to sell more produce in the same day which obviously also translates to a reduction in loss at the end of the day, which I thought was quite an interesting consideration for the project to also incorporate. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivan, for that addition. And then maybe if I could just pick on something that Frank said, and then also draw in the official from Lilongwe, is that you mentioned that you're developing a new strategy on food systems. Is it possible to please give an update on what your focus areas are on this strategy? Because we do have officials from Cape Town as well. I know to put you on the spot, but they've gone through this process of developing a food system strategy, and maybe there could be a bit of exchange around that. Is it possible to invite the official from Lilongwe to give us an update on what is the focus on the food system strategy? At what stage are you at in developing these? And then maybe there could be some linkages between other cities that have gone through the same process. Frank, I'm not sure who was the representative from Lilongwe that we can invite.
Yeah, we had Evans. I'm not sure if he's still here, but maybe in the absence of Evans, maybe Vitumbiko, maybe would do share more lights because it's also from the city. Vitu.
Vitu, over to you.
Sorry, I'm having problems with my connection. Can I please have the question again?
All right. No, thanks, Evan. So the question is around at what stage are you in the preparation of the strategy on food systems? And then what are some of the priority areas you're focusing on? And ideally, to bring this up is because we do have, for example, the city of Cape Town in the room that have already developed a food system strategy. And it could be an opportunity to do a bit of linkages between Lilongwe and city of Cape Town. And Tamzin has posted in the chat that she's more than happy to share some of the learnings. Tamzin is from the city of Cape Town, who is in charge of the food system strategy, and is happy to share more the learnings from the process. Evans, over to you.
Okay, so right now at Lilongwe, we're still in our stage. We're still trying to develop the proposal so that maybe we can find initial investors, but we're also prioritizing the policy making so that we can actually get this type of investment. That's to do with market redesigning and also some policy making to actually secure the markets that we want to install this. I don't know if I have answered.
I know this is in terms of what are the focus areas for your strategy on food systems?
Okay. The strategy mainly is to focus mainly on the investment management and also the awareness. Mainly the stakeholders have to be involved in the whole process. So that's mainly what we are prioritizing, the stakeholder engagement and also the investment itself.
All right, no, thank you. And maybe what I pick up is that, as a starting process, you're looking at the multi-stakeholder platforms or the multi-stakeholder engagements that can support this whole process around food system strategization, but then also looking at driving investments within the food system as some of the focus areas. All right. And then if I know Tamzin has indicated that she is happy to provide some learnings, and then maybe we could sort of do a bit of linkages there because I think there's quite some interesting learnings from the city of Cape Town, and she'll share a bit of that if it's okay. Sorry to ambush you, Tamzin, when we're looking at the Cape Town case.
Sure, it's okay.
Sure. Okay, so I'd like to invite our colleagues from Arusha to share what were some of the outcomes from your discussions in the room, and then maybe a bit of reflection from the city official on around the policy environment for driving the investment in food systems.
Thank you very much, Solo. From our breakout session, we had looked at the opportunities in the food systems that are a priority of the city, as well as the policies. And we had deep dive into the investment case. Some of the issues that were raised in the investment case was, one is that we need to really have farmers at the center of our case in terms of having a basic understanding and support them through linkages and knowledge in terms of producing safe and healthy foods. But also we need to incorporate tools that ensure that we verify food safety in the fruits and vegetable sector, as well as establish a verification that is sustainable, maybe using some of the actors such as the market masters and so on. But also scaling the investment is important to already have in mind right now at the proposed stage on how we are going to scale from the 2 proposed markets to more markets within the city, as well as in the country. And also demonstrate future funding needs that would come along that scaling, proposed scaling. Yeah. And that the main discussion around our case was that the budget was a little bit underestimated. And so we are going to take in the different ideas that were raised, such as putting in consideration of the scaling, the project, but also incorporating tools to verify food safety. So we're going to incorporate that into our proposed investment case. Thank you very much for all the inputs that was provided, and we look forward to use them and improve our case. Over to you, Solo.
Thank you very
maybe you
much.
could repeat.
No, the other question was directed to our official from Arusha City Council. You know, it's around some of the initiatives that he shared that the City Council is doing to create that enabling environment for food system transformation.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. First of all, we are conducting some different stakeholders meetings, and then that is the avenue to know what are really their challenges. That's first. The second thing, we also cooperate with the district commissioner and the mayor, Lord Mayor himself, in our meetings, so that we may identify and hear the challenges that are facing the local traders within the city. But currently we are undergoing the process of establishing or cooperating with the city solicitor, the one who is dealing with the bylaws. So we are now creating the new, or we are trying to modernize, I can say the modernization of the city bylaws, so that it may incorporate all the current issues or the modern issues arise within the city. And that is the great opportunity for all traders and stakeholders now to air out or to make that bylaw more cooperative to the society. So those are the challenges, the initiative that we are doing. Now, coming to my part as the city trade officer, I also have some business forums and meetings with the Chamber of Commerce itself, agriculture itself and the other stakeholders, so that we get all their concerns and we incorporate within the bylaws. So those are some of the efforts that we are doing.
Thank you very much for sharing some of the initiatives that you are implementing on ground. And I think one thing that's also kind of cross-cutting now is, first of all, creating these spaces for multi-stakeholder engagement, or getting input from different multi-stakeholders around as part of creating that enabling environment. So identifying from different sources, what the challenges are, but then also trying to identify even local solutions that have already been implemented and how this can be scaled up. But just to keep at the back of your mind as we are discussing is that, these separate investment opportunities we're almost done, we're done separately. But then when we brought the outcomes together, a common theme emerged, and that's around markets. So that rings a bell. In Arusha, markets are important points along the food value chain in Lilongwe. Also, the issue of markets was identified, but then also in Cape Town, markets were also identified. So what does that mean? Does that tell us that these are really leverage point for transformation? Because they connect farmers to consumers. They speak to issues around transportation, they speak to issues around access, and this is where prices sort of happen. So I think that's for us a space to think about or to reflect on, is that how can we, if markets have been identified as key points in the food value chain in Africa, then how can this be transformed to sort of deliver the nutritious and resilient foods, the food systems that we want. So Daniel, I'll hand over to you at this point, and then also invite a reflection from Lance and Tamsin from the City of Cape Town. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Solofina. In our breakouts, we considered the Cape Town case, which basically it's around the Cape Town fresh produce market. And a little bit of context for those who were not in the room, it presently supplies around 40% of fresh produce in the city of Cape Town. And so it's about supporting the informal traders who basically patronize the market, who buy in bulk in the market, basically supporting them to be able to do their business efficiently and in a way to reduce some costs that are associated with what they do, so that it can improve accessibility and reduce food waste, as it were. Some of the things that we reflected on, or basically 4 suites of interventions, or 3, were explored, or that's what we proposed. One is around a revolving loan, where you give loan to these informal traders to do their business better. And another one is around storage facility. I think that is very important in order to reduce food waste. And the third one is training of these informal food traders to be able to do their businesses well, and to upskill them in terms of financial management and the business management. So based on the discussion in the room, what people emphasized was that storage facilities and logistics will go a long way in enabling food access, and it will basically also contribute to reducing food waste. But there is this point that was noted in the room, that maybe more perspective from the informal traders are needed in order to understand better what their concerns are and how these can actually benefit them. So there was a consensus in the room that intervening in the food system needs a focus on the informal sector, because they are critical in the city of Cape Town and in almost every city in Africa. And a focus on markets, just like Solofina, you have said, and food environment is critical for food system transformation. What was also said, and And I think reflection from the city officials that were in the room was that the investment case is in alignment with what the city is doing. And for instance, the area economic development looks at all aspects of the informal market. It also looks at how the city can make it more viable for informal traders to be able to keep their produce fresh. But what came out and what resonated for me basically was the fact that the city, I mean, there was this by Lance, and I think maybe you can speak to it later, that the city cannot stimulate economic growth by building assets. I mean, so by only building assets, say cold storage, for instance, we recommended cold storage, but it is also important to take cognizance of the need to maintain and sustain it. So the city can build assets, but then maybe the city would not probably want to be the one responsible for maintaining and sustaining it. So the management model that will, it is very important then to consider the management model around the assets. So if the city builds the assets, it will want to explore outsourcing the management so that it can be sustained going forward, and the city will not need to worry about providing resources to manage such kind of assets. So that is why the city will be interested in partnerships to actualize some of these things. And the city also, like the city of Cape Town, basically from reflecting around cold storage, they would love to see cold storage in critical parts of the city, like we have also recommended. And there was an allusion to the pilot that is actually taking place on cold storage in Mitchell's Plain. And then there was this statement that the learnings from there can benefit the city and also the city's involvement in this investment case, in how they can take what we have proposed forward and contribute to it, so that the learnings from the Mitchell's Plain case, as far as cold storage facility is concerned, will be beneficial also for our case. So there is a form of alignment with what the city is doing and what we are proposing, and I think there is potential for what we have proposed. I think that's what came out from our discussion, and I can give the floor for Lance to also add to what I've said. Lance? Anyway, while we wait for Lance, maybe Tamsin can say one or two things.
Sure. So one of the other things that we talked about in our session was the fact that the Cape Town fresh produce market is a really big bulk part of the food system and the distribution system, and we need to consider what the other scales might be. And if it's okay, Daniel, would it be okay to quickly share my screen? I just want to show two pictures which illustrate.
Yes, you
very
can.
quickly. Okay. So, sorry guys, this is my personal little, not bugbear, but my passion. Is this whole idea of market and how we make markets and how and what local government's role is. So this is how we make our streets, and the streets are made for transport, but all of these other things happen in the streets as well. I mean, there are people selling and cooking and making food is a really important part of the food system, and also a central part of local government responsibilities in terms of the mandates that we have. So it's whilst we're looking at a big Cape Town fresh produce market, which is a big building, a series of buildings, etc., how do we then start to connect that big bulk entity with the smaller parts as well, and make sure that those connections are being made in a meaningful and intensive way, so that we don't end up with these kinds of environments which aren't actually really supporting. I mean, the food systems work is happening in them, but could we be doing better? Could we be having, I mean, the picture on the left, where's the cold storage? Where are the bicycles? If we want people to be able to deliver stuff by bike, where do they park bicycles safely? Where is the waste management within these environments? So it's looking very much at food environments as an extension of market, and market as a component of food environments. So I think that this would, the work that we're doing with Daniel and his team around the business case for the fresh produce market, then I'm always looking at the next thing, and I feel that this probably would be the next step of working with the informal sector and improving food systems through investment and partnerships, and what would they look like and how would we design them, etc. Okay, I think hopefully Lance is going to come in before I waffle on any further.
I'm not sure, Lance. Lance, are you still with us? I'm not sure Lance is still with us. So over to you, Sophia.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And I would like to thank our participants and also presenters from Cape Town, from Arusha, from Lilongwe. The discussions have been enlightening, but then also quite deep and engaging in their own way. So if there's one or two questions before we can talk of the next steps, please feel free to bring them up and to really reflect on some of the key things you're seeing in terms of those leverage points for food system change in African cities, and then also looking at how we can support local governments better, how local governments can support private investment around driving food systems transformation. Do you have any questions? Do you have any contributions before we can discuss the next steps forward? Please also use the chat function if you have any additions there. Or if you want to pose a question to a particular presenter, please do feel free to do that. Okay, going once, going twice. Are we all satisfied that this this event has answered some of the questions that brought us here, or it's beginning to incite certain questions in us? And I think around, and I think Tamsin touched on what are the local government mandates here. If there's programs that need to be done or pushed by the local government, how can this be transformed into mandates or into identified actions that different departments have to take? But then also as private agribusinesses, where do you start in terms of identifying where the opportunities lie or in identifying where the funding is? All right. Since I'm seeing no hands coming up, I think I'd like to just speak briefly about the next point. So we have developed 3 investment cases from Arusha, from Cape Town, and Lilongwe. And the idea is that from the contributions that have come through in this event, these will be strengthened and to encompass some of the additions. And ideally, once we've done this, also look at developing a policy brief for driving investment in Africa's urban food systems. And this will also be guided by some of the contributions received today. What does an enabling policy environment look like, and how can we strive towards this? So this set of documents one will share with our different platforms. We're seeing that this is being hosted by ICLEI and FAO, as well as our local partners in Lilongwe and Arusha. It's to be able to share these different investment opportunities and draw in the right funding and the right support for implementation of these different opportunities. But then it is also allow other cities and other local stakeholders to use this as examples to develop investment opportunities and investment cases that can drive systemic change in the food system. So we'll be able to share the completed investment cases as well as the policy brief, and then also and hopefully is that we'll be able to matchmake these cases with potential funders. So that's where we see this developing. So moving from the 3 cities, but being able to engage other cities around this whole concept of food systems investment, but then also supporting the existing cases in cities to see how these can be as one talked about, can be scaled up and how this can be sort of multiplied throughout the entire cities appropriately. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today. And if there is no additional question, I would like to take this opportunity to close the meeting.
Thank you so much, Solo.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.